All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to be talking about something today that's super important for our listeners who are getting ready for those UPSC exams.
Definitely.
It's all about India's climate action plan
Hmm.
and how this Union Budget 2026 could really be a turning point.
It is.
So we're basing this deep dive on a recent editorial in The Hindu, always a great source,
Oh, yeah. They always have really good insights.
always packed with good stuff.
Hmm.
Now, you might already know that India's got some pretty ambitious climate goals.
Yeah, definitely.
But here's a fact that might surprise you. Only a tiny, tiny fraction
Oh,
of the households that signed up for a major solar energy scheme actually have solar panels installed.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like 4%.
Wow.
So we're going to dig into why that is
Mm.
and what it means for India's climate targets
Right.
and how this budget could change the game. What do you think?
Yeah, this budget's a huge opportunity for India to show that it's serious about climate action. Not just talking about it, but actually taking action.
Yeah, walking the walk.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start with some good news, shall we?
Sounds good.
What are some of the positive steps that India has been taking recently? You're the
Yeah.
expert here.
Okay, well, there's the PM Surya Ghar Bijli Yojana,
Right.
which wants to give free solar power to homes all across the country. Over 1.45 crore households have already signed up for it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's like a massive step towards getting clean energy to everyone, right?
It is, yeah. It's especially important for rural electrification.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But what about reducing our reliance on fossil fuels in the bigger picture?
Right.
What's happening there?
So there's also the National Green Hydrogen Mission,
Oh, yeah?
which has gotten a big chunk of money from the budget.
Okay.
The goal is to make India a global hub for green hydrogen production.
Wow.
And that's really important because it'll help decarbonize those heavy industries like steel and cement,
I see, yeah.
which produce a lot of those greenhouse gases. It's a smart move to help India keep up with the rest of the world and actually be a leader in clean technology.
So it's not just about India. It's about India being a leader on the world stage.
Exactly.
Right. And I remember reading somewhere, I think it was in the Hindu, that India is also looking into offshore wind energy.
Yes.
That's got to be good for the environment, right?
Oh, for sure. Offshore wind has a ton of potential, especially for a country like India with its long coastline.
Right.
Tapping into that could really help us rely less on fossil fuels.
Awesome. Good for the environment and maybe a good question on the prelims exam.
Definitely a possibility. Keep that in mind.
So we've got some exciting initiatives in the works. But this editorial in the Hindu,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like it's hinting that there's kind of a disconnect between these big ambitions
Yeah,
and what's actually happening, like on the ground.
exactly. They're pointing out this gap between what the policies say and what's actually being done.
Right. It's like, imagine you have this amazing blueprint for a house,
Okay.
but then you can't find the right materials or the builders to actually make it happen.
I get it, yeah. It's like that with these climate policies.
Exactly.
Like the PM Surya Ghar Bijli Yojana, right? We said over 1.45 crore households signed up.
Yeah, over crore.
But the number that actually got solar panels installed is, well, it's really low.
Oh, no.
It's a little over 6 lakh. That's not even 5%.
What's going on there?
Well, it's complicated.
Yeah.
There are bureaucratic hurdles for sure.
I bet.
But it's also that there's not enough money to fund everything, and there's not really a good system to make sure these projects are actually getting done on time and within budget.
I see.
It's a tough problem to solve.
Yeah, and you know what else I read?
What's that?
That India depends a lot on imported solar panels.
That's right.
Doesn't that make things tricky, especially with all the supply chain problems happening globally?
Absolutely. Around 40% of India's solar panels come from other countries,
Well, 40%.
which makes everything more expensive.
Right.
And if something happens globally, suddenly our projects are at risk.
Oh, I see.
Plus, get this, solar panels made in India cost about 65% more.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right?
Yeah, it's a tricky situation.
We need those solar panels, but we can't really afford the ones made here, and the ones from overseas are risky.
Exactly.
So it seems like boosting our own manufacturing is like super important.
It is, yeah. This editorial really stresses that the Union Budget 2026 needs to tackle this head on.
Okay, so that's one thing to look out for.
Mm.
And I think I remember them talking about the potential of India's railway network too.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, they're saying there's so much space and infrastructure already there with the railways that we could use to generate solar and wind energy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Think about it. The estimate is that the network could produce up to 5 gigawatt of renewable energy.
5 GW, that's a lot.
It is. Just imagine the impact if we can harness that.
Yeah, that would be a game changer.
Yeah, it would.
It sounds like we've got the ideas,
We do.
but we really need the money and the policies to make them happen.
You hit the nail on the head.
And that's where this budget comes in, right?
Right.
It's a chance for India to prove it's serious about a clean energy future.
Totally. It's not just about India, though. There's also what's happening globally that we need to consider.
Oh, right.
What are you thinking of?
Like the EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism.
Now, this is getting interesting. I think our UPSC folks are going to want to know about this.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They need to know this.
Can you break down what that is? What was it called again?
The carbon border adjustment mechanism, CBAM for short.
CBAM.
Okay. It's basically a tax on imports from countries that don't have strict climate policies.
Oh, I see. So if a country's not doing enough to reduce their emissions,
Right.
the EU's going to hit them with a tax.
Exactly.
So they have to pay extra to sell their stuff in Europe.
It's like the EU saying, hey, if you want to sell to us, you got to clean up your act. Okay, that makes sense. But why does that matter so much for India?
Well, think about our exports,
Mm.
especially those small and medium-sized businesses, those MSMEs.
Yeah.
This could cost them a lot of money, potentially billions of dollars.
Wow, that's a big hit. So what can India do to get ready for this CBAM thing?
There are a few ideas in the editorial. One is setting up a dedicated climate action fund.
A climate action fund.
Yeah, kind of like what Japan's doing with their Green Transformation Fund.
Okay, and how would that work?
Basically, it would give money and support to industries to help them reduce their carbon footprint,
I see.
especially those industries that are most likely to be affected by CBAM.
Okay, so it's like helping them meet those tougher EU standards.
Exactly. It's not just about avoiding penalties, though. It's about making Indian businesses more competitive globally while also being better for the planet.
Right, so it's a win-win. Less pollution and a stronger economy.
Exactly. And there's another big opportunity here for India, embracing a circular economy.
Ah, yes, the circular economy. Everyone's talking about it these days. Can you remind us what that is?
Sure. A circular economy is about wasting less and reusing more.
Okay.
It's about moving away from that old take, make, dispose way of doing things.
Right, I remember that.
And instead focusing on reusing, repairing, and recycling stuff.
So it's like closing the loop, making sure things don't just end up in a landfill.
Precisely. And this fits perfectly with India's goals for sustainable development. There's this study that said that switching to a circular economy could make India 40 lakh crore every year by 2050.
40 lakh crore.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
it is.
So how do we make this circular economy a reality? Did the editorial have any suggestions?
They did. They suggested offering tax breaks and letting businesses write off investments in recycling and refurbishment tech faster.
So if businesses invest in making their operations more circular,
Mm-hmm.
they get some financial benefits.
Exactly. It's all about making it more appealing for companies to adopt these circular economy solutions.
Smart, because that could also lead to new green jobs, right?
Absolutely. It's good for the economy and the environment.
This is all incredibly important. I'm already seeing how relevant this is going to be for the UPSC exams.
Oh, absolutely.
But before we wrap up this part, I want to touch on climate resilience. We know that India is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change.
That's right.
So how do we protect ourselves from these growing risks?
You're right. That is a critical point.
Yeah.
And the editorial brought up a pretty worrying trend. Insurance coverage in India has fallen to only 3.7% in FY24.
3.7%.
Yeah, it's really low.
Wow. That's scary low.
It is. And it shows how urgently we need to find ways to protect people and businesses from climate disasters.
So what can be done? Does the editorial offer any solutions for this?
They do. One idea is to give tax breaks for insurance policies that are specifically for climate risks,
Oh, okay.
and maybe even lower the GST on premiums for disaster protection.
So that would make it cheaper for people to get insured against things like floods or droughts.
Yeah.
That sounds like a practical step.
It does.
Okay, wow, we've covered a lot in this first part.
We have.
From India's achievements in climate action to the challenges they're facing and all the potential solutions.
Yeah, we've gone from celebrating successes to dissecting the problems and brainstorming ways forward.
And I think we've given our future IAS officers a lot to think about.
Oh, for sure. They've got a lot to digest.
But we're not done yet. There's so much more to discuss,
Definitely.
especially when it comes to financing all of this.
Right. The money part is key.
we still need to talk about green finance and how this budget can mobilize the trillions of rupees needed to reach India's climate goals.
Yeah, that's a big one.
But we'll save that for part 2.
Looking forward to it.
But before we move on, just a reminder to everyone to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if you're finding this deep dive helpful for your UPSC prep.
It's going to be super useful for those exams.
We'll be back soon with part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the financial side of India's climate action plan. Stay tuned.
All right, so let's jump into the money side of things.
The money.
Because that's always a big question, isn't it?
It is.
Especially with climate action.
Exactly. Like, we can have all of the best plans in the world, but without the money to actually make them happen.
Right.
It's all just talk.
It is, yeah.
And I remember the editorial mentioned that India needs a huge amount of investment, like 162.5 trillion.
That's right.
To meet its climate goals by 2030.
That's the number, yeah.
I mean, that's just mind-blowing.
It is a huge number.
So how do we even begin to get that kind of money?
Well, first, we need to make sure that when people invest in green finance,
Right.
they know their money is going to the right places.
Okay, so it's about making sure the money is actually funding projects that are truly good for the environment
Exactly.
and helping India transition to that low-carbon economy we've been talking about.
Exactly.
So are you saying there's some confusion around what green finance actually means?
There is a bit of ambiguity, yeah. And that can lead to what they call greenwashing.
Greenwashing. I've heard of that.
It's where projects are labeled as green, even if they're not really doing that much for the environment.
Oh, sneaky. I bet that comes up in UPSC case studies.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's something to watch out for.
So what can the government do about this in the budget?
Well, they could start by clearly defining what green finance actually means.
Like an official definition?
Exactly. That would make things clear for investors.
Okay.
And it would ensure that the money goes where it's supposed to projects that really support India's climate goals.
So it's like setting the rules of the game so everyone knows what's what.
Precisely. But it's not just about defining what green finance is.
Right. There's got to be more to it than that.
There is. The budget can also use things like tax breaks, subsidies, and risk-sharing mechanisms.
Okay, can you break those down a little bit for us?
Sure. So tax breaks would mean that companies investing in green projects would pay less tax.
Okay.
Subsidies are like financial assistance from the government.
Right, helping to lower the cost of these green projects?
Exactly. And then there are risk-sharing mechanisms, which basically mean the government helps to reduce the risk for private investors.
I see. So that makes it less scary for them to put their money into these projects.
Exactly.
And we talked earlier about boosting domestic solar manufacturing.
He did.
Can the budget help with that too?
It can. Remember those production-linked incentives, the PLIs?
Oh yeah, the PLIs. I remember those from our last deep dive.
Right. Those have been successful in other industries. And they could definitely be used for solar, too.
Remind me how they work again.
So basically, if a company produces more solar panels,
Okay.
the government gives them a financial reward.
Oh, interesting.
It's a way to encourage them to make more solar panels here in India.
Ah, so it helps reduce our reliance on imports.
Exactly.
Okay.
Plus, it creates jobs and boosts the economy.
Right, there's a win-win-win.
It is. But we also need to think about how to make renewable energy more affordable for everyday people,
Yeah, that's a good point.
especially those who might not be able to afford those big upfront costs.
Right, like installing solar panels on their roofs can be really expensive.
It can be. That's why the editorial suggests looking into models like RESCO.
RESCO, yeah, we touched on that briefly in part 1.
We did. RESCO stands for Renewable Energy Service Company.
Right, right. Now, remind us how that works again.
Okay, so basically, a
Yeah.
RESCO company installs and takes care of the solar panels on your roof.
Okay.
And you just pay them for the electricity that the panels generate.
So you're not buying the panels, you're just paying for the electricity as you use it.
Exactly. Like a regular electricity bill, but the power's coming from your own roof.
That sounds so much more manageable than having to buy the panels outright.
It is, yeah. But we need to make sure it works for everyone.
What do you mean?
Well, there are some risks for both the people using the solar power
Okay.
and the companies providing it.
Right, so how can the government make sure this RESCO model works properly?
One way is through credit guarantees. The government could back up those RESCO companies. So it's easier for them to get financing and offer better rates to people.
So it's about creating a system where everyone feels confident and supported.
Exactly. And that's what makes this budget so crucial.
Right.
It's a chance to lay the foundation for a better energy future for India.
A future that's sustainable, equitable, and benefits everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, welcome back, everyone, for the last part of our deep dive.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion.
It has. We've gone over a lot, from policies to financing.
And those innovative solutions.
Right. And before we finish up, I wanted to bring up something we mentioned earlier. This idea that India's climate action plan,
Yes.
it's not just about the environment. It's about
It's about the whole picture.
the whole picture, yeah.
Yeah.
Economic growth
Social equity.
and how India has seen on the world stage.
Absolutely. It's about creating a better future for everyone in India while also doing our part to fight climate change globally.
And that's such a key point for our listeners,
Mm-hmm.
especially those getting ready for the UPSC exams.
It's all connected.
You need to understand how climate change is linked to everything.
Everything, yeah. Governance, development, it all ties in.
Right. It's not just a separate issue. It affects everything.
Exactly.
For those future IAS officers out there,
Mm-hmm.
you'll be dealing with these complex challenges.
Oh, yeah, they'll be right in the thick of it.
So you need that innovative thinking
For sure.
and a deep understanding of all these issues.
Absolutely. It's not just about knowing the facts.
Right. It's about connecting them,
Yeah.
seeing the bigger picture.
That's the key.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I want to leave our listeners with something to really think about.
I like it.
Imagine you're the finance minister.
Mm.
What would be your top priority
Oh, that's a good one.
for the Union Budget 2026 when it comes to India's climate action plan?
Hmm. What would I do?
Think outside the box, beyond what we've discussed.
Right.
What are the biggest challenges? Where are the opportunities?
Yeah, think about how to balance economic growth and being environmentally friendly.
Right, how do we make sure everyone benefits from climate action?
And how can India become a global leader in this fight?
These are the big questions, but they're the ones that matter.
They are,
And the future leaders listening today, you're the ones who will answer them.
I believe that.
Oh, and before we forget, make sure to check out that editorial from The Hindu.
It's a great resource.
It'll give you even more insights into India's climate journey.
It's well worth the read.
And if you found this deep dive helpful,
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives on all sorts of important topics.
We've got lots more to explore.
We'll be back soon with another one.
Until then, keep learning and asking questions.
Keep striving for a better future. We'll see you next time.